Hi, I'm Karl Feilder, and I'm taking exception to the state of the nation because I think we have a very serious problem, and the only way we're going to fix this is by taking exception to what we know is going on. But a little bit about me first. I don't want to scare everybody, but this is one of the places I grew up in. Horrible. No toilet, no kitchen. Somewhere really not good for you to start your childhood. But I was very lucky in that I had an exceptional opportunity. I sat a scholarship exam for a school, put on a cap, packed my trunk, and off I went to study with some really nice people in a very expensive school. I had another exceptional opportunity as well, because I was able to get a sponsorship from an industrial company to do my first degree. I took that exceptional opportunity and I grabbed it with both hands. I was able then, after a few more years, to take another exceptional opportunity and find another sponsoring company to sponsor me through my master's degree. These are the type of opportunities that you have to take, you have to grab hold of. You have to take these exceptional opportunities. But the problem is, well, what's the problem? The problem is that in 1992, the United Nations got together in Rio de Janeiro for the Earth Summit and made a pledge that from 1992 onwards, we will reduce the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, we will reduce global warming. And by 2015, you can see that we're actually 60% higher against a commitment from the United Nations to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide. So what did they do? They actually celebrated. Somebody has to say this is wrong. Somebody has to say that if you have a policy that runs for 23 years, and it actually achieves the exact opposite of what you wanted to achieve, then something is wrong. And of course, the issue with this is that somebody has to take exception with it. Somebody has to challenge it. Somebody has to stand up and say, there's something wrong with this. But let's look at something that they did right. Many of you will know that the problem with climate change is closely related to how many people there are on the planet. Of course, the issue is that we have too many children in our families. But when you dig below the surface of how many children we have in our families, you find that one fundamental issue is affecting the number of children. And that's how educated are the ladies or the girls in these different countries. So what the United Nations has done extremely well, which has had a massive impact on climate change, is to educate girls and therefore reduce the birth rate, reduce the number of children per lady. The thing I would take exception to in this is that most of those education programs have been to the ladies. They haven't been to their husbands. The husbands still don't know why the lady is saying, I want less children. This, of course, is the track for India. You can see we've gone from nearly 5 average children per family in 1981, all the way down to just over 2.5. This is a fantastic progress and will definitely impact climate change. But the other issue is one of responsibility. I mean, honestly, if the United Nations is telling the world that they want to reduce greenhouse gases, and yet they still manage to achieve a 60% increase, then who is truly responsible? Whose fault is it? Well, not surprisingly, you can actually find out by asking the companies. Because if you really think about it, not many governments actually generate carbon emissions. Governments don't have huge fleets of vehicles. Governments don't have huge numbers of ships. Governments don't have huge numbers of airplanes. Sure, they might have 1 or 2, but they don't have hundreds of aeroplanes. Actually, the issue is that industry and the choices that industry makes has the most massive effect on climate change. And this is one of the things that we really need to focus on. If it is an industrial problem created by corporates and their decisions, then there's no point in the United Nations making some decisions amongst government leaders. It's the businesses that have to change the way that they do things. So my view is that it's actually business decisions that we need to be targeting and not the impact on consumers. Consumers, as we've seen from the COVID epidemic, consumers are really bad at following instructions. Consumers are really bad at actually understanding what's important. How many people at the moment are questioning whether to take a vaccine for COVID? I mean, honestly, huge epidemic around the world. There's a vaccine, multiple vaccines available. This shouldn't even require any thinking, but consumers believe that they want a choice. And the same goes for climate change. Consumers are thinking, well, maybe I don't want to drive an electric vehicle because I really want a 5-litre V8 huge vehicle. Seriously? If you gave them the choice, if you said to them, would you like to drive a car that's going to make sure that your grandchildren don't have fresh air, what would they do? We have to engage with businesses, and we have to show them how to do this right. We have to show businesses that this is about science. It's about measuring things to 2 decimal places. And what you don't measure, you can't manage. So we have to get a baseline for every business. Every business needs to go out there and start collecting emissions data. Start collecting the data about where their emissions are coming from. And once they've got a baseline, what do they need to do? They need to set a net zero target. A net zero target so that their business is not generating anything that contributes to climate change. And net zero targets, the zero is the clue, net zero targets require numbers. We have to measure things. We have to have strategies. And it's possible for every business in the world now to achieve net zero, but what they're going to need is some massive amounts of innovation. Everything that we've grown up with, ever since we were kids, everything that we've seen, the suit I'm wearing, the shoes I'm wearing, the carpet I'm standing on, the lights in this theatre, they all need to be done differently. We have to power them with different renewable energy sources. We have to make our clothes out of different things, and we need to make them last longer. I got a great example. I was very privileged to be able to work with DHL. And this is a huge global company that has lots and lots of vehicles, and a few aircraft, and a few more vehicles, and a few more aircraft, and then some other types of aircraft. In fact, as a business, worldwide of 520,000 people, it has 200,000 vehicles, 423 aircraft, 13,500 buildings. It's massive. And guess what? The solution isn't going to be a manned cycling. We need different thinking. We need different ways of addressing this. We need creativity. We need innovation. How big is their particular problem? Well, we took a look at this in 2006, which was the baseline year. In 2006, DHL had a global carbon footprint of 33 million tons of carbon equivalents. That's a big number, but it doesn't mean much to us. Well, 33 million tons was the same as all those countries put together. With those countries, and with those countries. Is it any wonder that United Nations has a problem making a change to our climate change impact when 46 countries' equivalent carbon emissions are the responsibility of one company? One company with one CEO, one CFO, you can sit down with them, you can reason with them, and you can get them to make a strategy change. And that will have the same impact as getting 46 countries' heads together and trying to persuade them to make a change. DHL was great in the way that they addressed this. After 2007, they started looking at electric vehicles. Their board of directors each got to experience what it was like to drive one of these cute little cars. And they thought this was such a fantastic idea, they went to some of the vehicle manufacturers. And they said to them, you guys are used to innovating. We see this in your advertisements every day. You're innovating the car industry. We'd like you to create something that's a little bit different. Please, can you make us an electric delivery truck? And the car companies said, that's a bit new. We haven't done that before. We're not sure we know how to make electric vehicles. And you know what? That's not true. In the 1930s, Deutsche Post DHL, so Deutsche Post at the time, had nearly 4,000 electric delivery trucks. In 1938, they had electric delivery trucks. And in fact, until 1908, the world land speed record was held by an electric vehicle. 1908. That's 100 years before Tesla. Before these wonderful electric vehicles that we have now. It was there, we had the technology, we forgot, now we need to bring it back again. So when the car companies said they couldn't make this for DHL, what did they do? They said, you know what, we'll do it ourselves. If you as an auto industry don't want to innovate the way we want it as customers, then we will create our own. So Deutsche Post DHL now drives their own vehicles made in their own factory, and they're all electric. And this is a fantastic example of innovation. So the other exception that you need to take here, you need to make a career decision. Young people everywhere in the world have to make the decision, post-COVID, what am I going to do? Now, I've had the luxury of many decades of working in different environments, and I can tell you that the best thing you can choose is to do something that suits your natural skills, something that makes you happy, something that gives you satisfaction. And we're all different. The best choice that you can make is to do a little bit of thinking. What's actually going to make me satisfied? What's going to make a difference? What am I going to be proud of?
Global warming is the average increase in the Earth's temperature caused by the reflecting heat of the greenhouse gases.
And that creates a blanket around the Earth.
The heat gets stuck in Earth because of this carbon dioxide.
The world will last forever because God will never let us down. And besides, global warming, we can take care of it. If the polar bears have no place to live, maybe we could try to make room in zoos and stuff. What can I do for the world? Me?
What it really needs is for us to realize what we've been doing and to stop it.
I'm really afraid of my children growing up and not being able to see like a blue sky or green grass.
If we protect the world will protect us.
If I don't do something, who will, you know?
I've got 3 children. I hope one day to have grandchildren. And I know that my children want to make a difference. And I'm pretty certain that your children do too. We have to focus now our career choices on what is actually going to make the best for our planet. How are we going to undo the last 100 years of climate change, the damage that we've done to our planet? Well, Ban Ki-moon said we need to recognize that this is a fantastic opportunity. It's not a bad thing. It's a great economic opportunity to reinvent the world, to redo everything that we've done over those last 100 years. We have an opportunity to create. And there's a lot of people in the world. So how are all these people going to help? They all need to look at the challenge from slightly different ways because they all have slightly different skills. So I would suggest that you just think. Think about what makes you happy. Do you need a lot of security? Do you really need to conform? Do you actually want to create? In your work environment, is it something that you really need to do to make an impact? Is it something that you need to do for your freedom? Do you actually fundamentally need to not have a boss? And lastly, do you really want to change the world? Now, all of those things are perfectly acceptable, and I would suggest that you just look at this on a spectrum. Do you really want to do any of these things, or do you not want to do these things? And that will put you on what I call the entrepreneurial spectrum. Either you want to be an employee, and that's perfectly fine, or you'd like to be an entrepreneur and make a difference creating within a large organization, or you'd like to strike out on your own, change the world, and be an entrepreneur. I know where I fit in, but I know that not everybody's like me. I think many people would say that's a good thing. But you need to think, where do you fit in? So the big question now is, how are you going to execute on that decision? How are you actually going to make a difference? Well, I would say that this young lad has learned a few things over the years. He's learned that it's about people, about responsibility, about innovation, about decision making, but primarily it's about execution. Thank you.
So now we have got your